Welcome to our deep dive on the immigration policy paradox in Europe. Today we will explore why hardline approaches, often branded as common-sense border control, are not the political cure all they're marketed to be. We will analyze the reputation versus results trap, clarify the difference between asylum and economic migration, and discuss the controversial proposition to train and repatriate. We will use diagrams, comparisons, and a couple of quick quizzes to test your knowledge. Let's begin. Here is our agenda. First, we'll set the context and look at the trend across Europe. Next, we'll unpack the political trap of reputation versus results. Then, we'll distinguish asylum from economic migration. After that, we'll examine the controversial train and repatriate idea. We'll also walk through a practical policy design checklist and visualize options. Finally, we'll summarize key takeaways and wrap up. Across Europe, particularly in Nordic countries, we have seen a wave of stricter immigration policies. While these measures sometimes correlate with a short-term decline in net migration, the broader political outcomes are more complicated. As we transition into the analysis, keep in mind that policy success can be multidimensional and not merely reflected in a single metric such as net migration. Before we proceed, a brief disclaimer. This video provides educational analysis and does not constitute legal, policy, or political advice. We strive to maintain balance, center human dignity and rights, and reference evidence-based perspectives. Immigration policy involves ethical, legal, and humanitarian considerations that vary by jurisdiction and context. Please consult official sources and independent research when forming policy judgments. Now, let's continue. Let's unpack the political trap. First, adopting tougher immigration policies can produce a short-term drop in net migrations. However, as the flowchart shows, these apparent wins can be offset by reputational costs internationally and perceptions at home that tactics are excessively harsh. Consequently, this sequence often generates voter backlash and, in some cases, electoral losses or political instability. Meanwhile, operational strain on agencies can create implementation gaps, eventually leading to policy reversals or remorse among the policy architects themselves. Overall, the headline numbers do not always translate to sustainable political success. Here we compare asylum seekers with economic migrants. Asylum seekers flee immediate threats such as persecution or war, and the protection they receive is meant to be temporary. Their status arises from humanitarian obligations and international law, and safety takes priority. Economic migrants, by contrast, primarily seek better opportunities and long-term relocation, and are typically managed through labor and visa frameworks. Mixing these distinct categories can strain resources and weaken public trust. With that distinction clearer, we can examine how conflation impacts systems and perceptions. Next, let's discuss system strain and public trust. When asylum and economic migration are conflated, confidence in the asylum system erodes. This often leads to processing delays and legal bottlenecks. Public services, including housing, education, and healthcare, face additional pressure. Media narratives can become polarized, amplifying social tension. Over time, governments may swing between policies, causing institutional fatigue. These dynamics underscore the need for clear categories and predictable procedures. Here is a practical checklist. First, define concrete objectives. Then, clarify categories and eligibility to avoid conflation. Ensure all measures comply with legal standards and safeguard human rights. Next, plan capacity based on data and continuous monitoring. Communicate transparently to maintain public trust. Measure both outcomes and trust indicators, not just migration numbers. Finally, schedule reviews, make adjustments, and consider sunsets where appropriate. Now let's examine the train and repatriate proposal. The core concept is to treat asylum as temporary, combining protection with skills training that may support reconstruction in the country of origin. Once safety is verifiably restored, beneficiaries are required to return. The approach seeks to balance sovereignty and long-term sustainability. Nevertheless, serious ethical concerns arise around potential coercion, consent, and disruption to integration. Logistically, authorities must verify safety, monitor outcomes, and secure funding. Alternatives include expanding legal labor channels, developing regional compacts, and utilizing targeted resettlement. Considering these trade-offs, any pathway must be rights-respecting, transparent, and feasible. This matrix compares several approaches. Tough controls can deliver visible border management and short-term reductions, but risk reputational harm and political backlash. Train and repatriate may build capacity aligned with the temporary nature of asylum, but faces ethical concerns and verification challenges, making implementation complex. Legal labor pathways can meet economic needs and reduce misuse of asylum systems, but may face political resistance due to perceived wage pressures. Regional compacts offer burden sharing, but often suffer from uneven compliance and slower timelines. Targeted resettlement protects highly vulnerable populations, though scale is limited and selection processes can be contentious. This mind map organizes major policy options and their components. Each main branch, tough controls, train and repatriate, legal labor pathways, and regional compacts, breaks down into benefits, risks, metrics, and prerequisites. The cross-cutting theme is safeguarding human rights and maintaining public trust through transparency and accountability. The map helps policymakers and the public see the trade-offs side by side and understand how different elements interact. This timeline shows the life cycle of an asylum case. It begins with flight from danger, followed by arrival and registration. Protection and services are provided. Then skills assessments and training may occur. Periodically, authorities review safety conditions in the country of origin. At a decision point, if conditions are genuinely safe, return may be considered. Otherwise, protection may be extended or resettlement explored. Post-return support and monitoring are essential to avoid harm and to validate outcomes. At each stage, legal safeguards and voluntary consent, where applicable, should be emphasized. This pie chart represents approximate drivers of public opinion. Economic security often dominates, followed by perceptions of fairness in how the system operates. Humanitarian values also play a substantial role, while trust in institutions shapes acceptance of policy changes. Media narratives influence the framing, though they are typically not the primary driver. These proportions will vary by country and context, but are useful for designing communication strategies and metrics. Here are quick notes using a Markdown style for emphasis. First, the key distinction is that asylum provides temporary protection, while economic migration seeks long-term opportunity. Second, metrics should include not only net migration and processing times, but also appeal outcomes, integration and return rates, and public trust indices. Finally, safeguards must include non-refoulement, due process, independent oversight, and transparency of data and decisions. Quiz time. The question is, which risk often offsets short-term drops in net migration after tough policies are enacted? The options are: operational costs only, international reputation and voter backlash, fewer legal appeals, guaranteed electoral gains. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is international reputation and voter backlash. Even when headline numbers improve, reputational damage and public perception of harsh tactics can drive political costs that undermine long-term success. Here is the second quiz. Which statement best distinguishes asylum seekers from economic migrants? The options are: asylum is permanent by design, economic migration is temporary, asylum provides temporary protection from danger, economic migration pursues better opportunities. Both are governed by the same laws and processes. Asylum is mainly about wage gains. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is that asylum provides temporary protection from danger, whereas economic migration is the pursuit of better opportunities, typically under labor and visa frameworks. This distinction is crucial for policy design and public trust. Here are the key takeaways. First, hardline policies can deliver short-term gains while imposing long-term political costs. Second, clear distinctions between asylum and economic migration are essential to protect system legitimacy. Third, the train and repatriate concept addresses the temporary nature of asylum, but introduces ethical and operational challenges. Fourth, a balanced portfolio might include legal labor channels, regional agreements, and targeted resettlement. Finally, policies should be measured by outcomes and public trust, not only by headline numbers, while safeguarding rights throughout. To wrap up, restrictive policies are on the rise across Europe, Yet their political payoff remains uncertain due to reputational costs and voter backlash. The central contradiction involves conflating temporary asylum with long-term economic migration. The train and repatriate approach offers one response but carries significant ethical and logistical trade-offs, prompting consideration of alternatives. Looking ahead, policymakers should clarify categories, protect rights, monitor trust as well as outcomes, and adapt policies with transparency and regular review. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you think differently about immigration policy trade-offs, please like, share, and subscribe. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you prioritize, and which safeguards matter most to you? Until next time.